I'm a big fan of Scooby-Doo. I have been ever since I was a little kid, when I was introduced to the original series. Ever since then, I've watched nearly every one of the feature films. If you don't know, the films are split into three categories: the older films with the old animation style, the 2000 films with the art style based off What's New Scooby-Doo, and the modern films with a slicker art style that's slightly based off the Mystery Incorporated series. Now, while the What's New films are probably the most nostalgic to me personally, they weren't the best. Scooby-Doo Camp Scare was the second film in the latest era of animation, and in my opinion, the best. There are some other good ones like Abracadabra Doo and The Legend of the Phantasaur, but Camp Scare offers something new. Let's start off with the animation, and arguably the main attraction of the Scooby films, the monsters. The animation is clean and nice. I like the art style. But the monsters, I'd say they're probably some of the best in the entire series. The first is the Woodsman. From just one look, you'd assume he's nothing special. I mean, he's a big green guy with an axe, but whenever he's on screen, there's a really menacing feeling.
The boathouse! It can't be!
And whenever he appears, this sinister sting plays, which only adds to the creepiness. And he actually does some villainous shit, like literally blowing up buildings and destroying half of the camp. I mean, if I met this guy in a forest, I'd definitely be freaked out. The Woodsman is definitely a standout among Scooby-Doo villains, and is an excellent slasher villain. Now, the other two monsters are less impressive, but not too bad all things considered. The Fishman is your run-of-the-mill sea creature, but he does have some pretty tense scenes in the lake. The third monster was Nightmare Fuel as a child, but luckily only appears in one scene. There are some human villains, of course, but I'll get to those in just a minute. The plot is actually interesting. A lot of Scooby films have pretty basic and predictable plots, but this one was actually kind of compelling. To summarise, the Scooby Gang are visiting Fred's old camp Little Moose, which is a lot less developed than the expensive modern camp Big Moose, and both of them are separated by a dam. The Scooby Gang are camp counselors for these three kids, Luke, Trudy and Deacon. The Woodsman attacks repeatedly, telling them to get out of camp, and Deacon continuously urges them to leave too. Whilst swimming in Lake Big Moose, they discover an underwater building before being attacked by the Fishman. After going back to investigate further, they discover that there's an entire town down there, and dynamite in the caves in Lake Big Moose. Meanwhile, the other half of the cast find a stolen RV that is using sonar to scan the lake, and they are attacked by the Spectre. The mystery reaches its climax here, and is actually intriguing for both children and adults. I definitely was. After returning to Little Moose, they find the Woodsman has destroyed the camp, and Deacon leaves to Camp Big Moose. They start to piece together the puzzle, but not before the entire dam blows up and the camp is flooded. With the water from Big Moose now gone, they find the underwater town in its place. You see, there was once a town called Moose Creek, where a gangster pulled off a huge heist and hid money somewhere within the town. Eventually, the dam was built, flooding the town and creating two lakes, where the two camps were built. The only person who knew about the treasure was his cellmate, Babyface Beretti. Hey, doesn't he remind you of someone? Yeah, Deacon is Babyface. After heading into town, they fight off the monsters, and they realize Babyface is using the sundial on the building that Scooby previously saw to locate the gangster's missing treasure. They stop Deacon and discover he and the ranger were using sonar to locate the town, and the ranger from town was dressing up them as the monsters to scare people away. I can't do this plot justice with just a summary, but I will compliment it. It had me guessing for almost the entire movie, and each time the plot thickened, the movie gets more interesting. Of course, the story is supported by the cast of characters. In the original series, the Scooby Gang, apart from maybe Shaggy and Scooby, wasn't developed at all, but with each iteration they got more and more depth to them.
Everyone is more interesting, especially Fred and Daphne, who actually have quite a heartwarming scene during the Fishman attack. Scooby and Shaggy take a backseat from being the singular main focus for once, and there are quite a few good jokes scattered throughout the film, especially involving them. Velma's good too, especially around Trudy. Speaking of which, the side characters are all fun and engaging too, with compelling relationships to the main cast. It's interesting to watch Freddy struggle to mentor Luke, or to watch Trudy come out of her shell and enjoy the camp. Scooby-Doo characters can often be flat and one-dimensional, but by the end of the film, even newcomers to the Scooby-Doo series will have had a taste of their personas. The plot twist about Deacon was pretty good. I mean, it makes sense for him to be the villain, considering his behaviour throughout the film, and it only becomes obvious that he is the antagonist during the backstory of Moose Creek. So in terms of the mystery, I feel this movie managed to keep it hidden well, and the conclusions that the characters made didn't feel forced or unrealistic. I think in the movies, characters are allowed to shine much more than in some of the shows, and especially in Camp Scare, the plot and the character development blend really well to create a fun movie with some creepy and menacing villains and a great mystery behind it. To finish it off, I want to talk about a post-credit scene that I only heard about while researching for this video. As it turns out, the Spectre is real. Not a person disguised as a monster, but an actual creature. What? I mean, it's a scary monster. Just watching that post-credit scene made me kind of freaked out. But I don't really understand the purpose of it, since the whole point of Babyface's plan was that he was using camp legends to scare away people. Legends, meaning they're not real. What does this mean for the camp? I don't know. I don't see a purpose for this post-credit scene, but oh well, you can't have everything. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.